The day before my 50th birthday, my deceased father came to me in a dream and told me, "Don't wear the dress from your husband." I woke up in a cold sweat. It was true. My husband had recently bought me a dress. And when the seamstress brought it to me, I cut the lining open and froze in horror. Welcome to Betty's Stories. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and gave my video a like. Now let's jump into the story. I'm sure you'll enjoy it till the end. Olivia Sutton, known to everyone as Liv, woke with a sharp gasp, as if she'd been violently ejected from dark water onto the surface. Her heart pounded so hard she felt it might leap right out of her chest. She gasped for air, feeling the damp cotton of her nightgown clinging to her back, soaked with sweat. Her hand fumbled for the lamp switch, and the room flooded with a soft, warm light. Next to her, on his side of the king-size bed, Marcus "Mark" Sutton slept peacefully. He was lying on his side, turned away from the wall, and didn't even stir at her sudden awakening. Liv listened to his even breathing, trying to calm herself, but she was trembling inside. A dream. It was only a dream. But why was it so terrifying? She carefully got out of bed, careful not to wake her husband, and walked on unsteady legs to the kitchen. Her hands shook as she poured water into a glass. She took several sips, but the lump in her throat wouldn't budge. She sat down at the table, dropped her head into her hands, and closed her eyes, only to open them immediately. The vision from the dream instantly reappeared. It was her father, her daddy, who had passed away from a heart attack 3 years ago. He stood in the doorway of their master bedroom, exactly as she remembered him, in his favorite gray sweater she had knitted for him for his 60th birthday. His face was serious, even stern, and his eyes stared right at her with piercing alarm. "Ollie," he said softly, but his voice sounded so clear, as if he were truly standing there. "Don't wear the dress from your husband. You hear me? Don't wear that dress." He repeated the words 3 times, never taking his eyes off her, and then slowly dissolved into the darkness, as if he'd never been there. Liv woke up with a scream that got trapped somewhere in her throat and couldn't break free. She rubbed her temples, trying to banish the haunting image. What nonsense. Just a dream, a common nightmare before an exciting day. Tomorrow was her 50th birthday. Her daughter Nicole and her family would be here. Friends would gather. A table was set at the Magnolia Grill. Of course, she was overwrought, and that's why she dreamt all that foolishness. But why about the dress? Liv shuddered, clutching the glass tighter. The dress. 2 weeks ago, Mark had ceremoniously presented her with a large box tied with a satin ribbon. Inside lay a gorgeous evening gown, deep emerald green, her favorite shade. The fabric was special, shimmering in the light, and the cut flattered her figure while remaining elegant and modest. "This is for your celebration," Mark said, smiling. "I ordered it from that seamstress Nikki recommended, Ms. Evelyn Reed, I think. She said she'd account for all your measurements. I want you to be the most beautiful woman at your 50th. Liv had been moved to tears. Mark had never been a particularly romantic man, always practical and level-headed. In their 20 years of marriage, she was used to his gifts being useful and thoughtful, but without much flair. And now, such attention, such care. Though there was something strange about his insistence. "You absolutely must wear this dress," he repeated several times. "I want everyone to see what a beautiful wife I have. No other dress will do, you understand. This is a special day." She joked it off then, saying, "Of course I'll wear it. How could I not, with a gift like this?" But something in his voice, the way he looked at her when he spoke about the dress, made her feel a slight discomfort. However, she immediately dismissed the thoughts. Mark just wants everything to be perfect. That's why he's anxious. Liv got up and walked to the window. The pre-dawn darkness still held outside the glass. Only the eastern sky was beginning to lighten. The clock on the microwave showed 5 a.m. She still had an hour before her alarm, but she knew she wouldn't be able to fall back asleep. Her father's image wouldn't leave her head. She remembered him in life, caring, wise, always sensing when something was wrong with her. Even when she was well into her 30s, he still treated her like a little girl who needed protection. "Mark's a good guy," her father had said after their wedding. "He's reliable, but Liv, always listen to your heart. If something feels off, if there's worry inside, don't ignore it. A woman's intuition is rarely wrong." Was this intuition, or just nerves and exhaustion? The last few months had been tough. Work, endless household chores, preparing for the birthday. Plus, Nikki called almost every day, discussing party details, anxious that everything be perfect. Liv returned to the bedroom. Mark was still asleep, hadn't moved. She looked at his face in the semi-darkness, familiar features, gray at his temples, wrinkles around his eyes. 20 years together. 2 decades of life, joys, and hardships they'd overcome together. How could she suspect him of anything bad because of a silly dream? She lay back down, pulled up the quilt, and forced herself to breathe evenly. She counted her breaths, trying to relax, but sleep wouldn't come. Her father's voice echoed in her ears, persistent and troubled. "Don't wear the dress from your husband." When the alarm clock rang, Liv had long been awake. She lay staring at the ceiling, turning the same thoughts over and over in her mind. Mark stretched, yawned, and turned to her. "Morning, birthday girl," he mumbled sleepily, pecking her on the cheek. "How'd you sleep?" "Fine," she lied, forcing a smile. "A little nervous, of course." "Oh, come on." Mark sat up and rubbed his face. "Everything will be perfect. You know how great Nikki is. She thought of every detail. And you, in that dress, you'll simply be the queen of the night." That dress again. Liv felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "Mark, maybe I'll just wear that blue one after all. Remember the one we picked out together last year? It really suits me too." Mark froze, turned to her, and she saw something flash in his eyes. Annoyance? Or did she imagine it? "Liv, we agreed," he said, his voice firm. "I specifically ordered this dress for your 50th. I spent good money, by the way. Ms. Reed worked hard, altering it just for you. Are you trying to offend me?" "No, of course not," she quickly replied, feeling guilty. "I just thought, forget it. I'll wear your dress, of course." Mark nodded, and his face instantly softened again. "That's my girl. You'll see. Everyone will gasp." He got out of bed and headed to the bathroom, leaving Liv sitting there, clutching her knees. What is wrong with me? Why am I reacting this way to a simple request from my husband? He was right. He spent money, tried to do something nice for her, and she was being temperamental over a dream. She forced herself to stand and go to the kitchen to make breakfast. She turned on the electric kettle, got out eggs for the omelet, and sliced bread. The familiar motions calmed her slightly, distracting her from the persistent thoughts. Mark emerged from the shower, already dressed, hair neatly combed, smelling of cologne. "I'm running into the office for a bit today," he said, pouring himself coffee. "Need to sign a couple of documents. I'll be back by lunchtime. What are you up to?" "Just hanging out at home." Liv stirred the omelet in the skillet. "I'll call Nikki. Then I need to get ready. By the way, Ms. Reed promised to drop off the dress today for the final adjustments." "Perfect." Mark sat at the table and picked up his fork. "So you'll try it on this evening, and tomorrow everything will be perfect." They ate breakfast mostly in silence. Mark scrolled through news on his phone, occasionally commenting on something. Liv nodded mechanically, but her husband's words flew right past her. She watched him, trying to spot something suspicious, some sign that her anxiety was justified. But she only saw the familiar Mark, a little tired, preoccupied with work, but generally calm. After breakfast, he got ready and left. Liv walked him to the door, received a routine kiss, and was left alone in the empty house. The silence was deafening. She walked through the rooms, straightening the curtains, wiping away non-existent dust, but her actions were automatic. One thought spun in her head: the dress, Dad's warning. The phone rang, and she jumped. The seamstress's name lit up the screen. "Mrs. Sutton, good afternoon. It's Evelyn Reed. I'm just about to head your way. The dress is ready. Is now a good time? Yes, yes, of course. Liv looked at the clock. Come on over. Wonderful. I'll be there in half an hour. Liv hung up and sat on the sofa. The dress was coming now, the very dress her father had warned her about in the dream. And what would she do? Tell the seamstress she changed her mind? Throw away her husband's gift? On what grounds? She stood up and started pacing the room, hugging herself. She needed to distract herself, to switch gears. She dialed her daughter's number. "Mom, hey!" Nikki's voice sounded cheerful. "How are you feeling? A little nervous?" Liv tried to sound energetic. "Is everything all set with the Magnolia Grill?" "Mom, I've told you 100 times. Everything's great. The table's set. The cake is ordered. The band confirmed. You just have to show up and accept congratulations. Did you try on the dress, by the way?" "Not yet. She's bringing it today." "Oh, I can't wait. Dad was raving about it, says it's stunning. By the way, little Mikey is all worked up. He told everyone at his preschool that his grandma is having a big party." Liv smiled, picturing her 4-year-old grandson chattering endlessly. "Tell him Grandma can't wait to see him." They talked about small things for a bit longer, and Nikki said goodbye, saying she was busy with the final preparations. Liv put down the phone, once again alone with herself. The doorbell rang exactly 30 minutes later. Ms. Evelyn Reed stood on the porch with a large garment bag in her hands, smiling. "Hello, Mrs. Sutton. I brought your beautiful gown. I hemmed the bottom as you asked and adjusted the darts. I think it fits perfectly now." "Thank you so much." Liv invited her in and led her to the bedroom. The seamstress carefully took the dress out of the bag, and Liv admired it again. It was truly beautiful. The fabric shimmered softly. The emerald shade was rich and sophisticated. The cut emphasized her waist, concealing a slight tummy. The 3/4 sleeves covered her arms. A professional job, no question. "Please try it on," Ms. Reed requested. "I'll check that everything is just right." Liv nodded and went behind the screen. She took off her casual clothes and slipped on the dress. The zipper went up easily. The fabric hugged her body without restricting movement. She stepped out and stood before the mirror. "Oh," the seamstress clapped her hands. "How wonderful it looks on you. Look at that waist, that posture. You will be the star of the party, honestly." Liv looked at her reflection and saw an elegant woman in a luxurious dress. Yes, it suited her. Yes, she looked great. But why was she still tormented by a nagging sense of dread? She ran her hand over the fabric, over the hem, over the waist. Everything seemed normal. What could possibly be wrong with the dress? "The lining is natural silk," Ms. Reed explained, pointing out the details. "Your husband insisted that everything be made from the finest materials. And by the way, he asked for hidden pockets in the side seams in case you want to put your phone or a tissue in there." Liv nodded, listening half-heartedly. She was trying to figure out what was wrong, but she couldn't find anything. Maybe she really was just overly worried? "I think everything is excellent," the seamstress concluded. "If you have no questions, I should run. I have another client waiting." "Yes, thank you very much for your work." Liv took off the dress, changed clothes, and walked Ms. Reed to the door. Left alone, she hung the dress on a padded hanger in the closet and stood for a long time staring at it. Beautiful, expensive, sewn with love and care. Or not. "Don't wear the dress from your husband." Her father's voice rang in her head again, and Liv realized she couldn't just forget the dream. There was something so urgent, so real about it, that she simply couldn't ignore it. She closed the closet, moved away, and sat on the bed. She had to decide what to do next. Tomorrow was the party, and this damn dress. Mark returned home for lunch as promised. Liv heard the front door slam, heard him walk into the hallway, kicking off his shoes. She was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of cold tea and flinched at the sound of his footsteps. "Well, did the dress arrive?" he called from the hall. "Yes, everything's fine," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Mark walked into the kitchen, kissed her on the top of the head, and sat down across from her. "Did you try it on?" "Mm-hmm. Ms. Reed said it fit perfectly." "That's great." He nodded contentedly. "You'll be stunning tomorrow. Listen, I have to run over to see my friend Kevin this evening. He's dropping off some documents for the deal, probably for about 3 hours. You don't mind?" "No, of course not," Liv shrugged. "Go ahead." Mark ate lunch, watched a little TV, then got ready and left. Liv walked him to the door, and when the lock clicked, leaving her alone, she felt a strange relief, as if she could finally exhale. She walked into the bedroom and opened the closet. The dress hung on the hanger, serene and beautiful. Liv reached out and ran her fingers over the fabric. What could be wrong? Maybe she should just examine it more closely. But what exactly was she looking for? She took the dress off the hanger and laid it on the bed. She sat next to it, examining every seam, every stitch. Everything looked flawless. Ms. Reed truly was a master of her craft. Straight seams, neat finishing, no loose threads or wrinkles anywhere. Liv turned the dress over, inspecting the lining. The silk felt smooth against her fingers. She ran her palm over the inside, and suddenly it seemed like the fabric near the waist was slightly thicker than in other places. Or was it her imagination? She stood up, turned on the desk lamp, and held the dress closer to the light. She squinted. No, she hadn't imagined it. In the lining, near the side seam by the waist, there was a small irregularity, as if something was sewn inside. Her heart skipped a beat. Liv put the dress down and walked around the room, clenching and unclenching her fists. What foolish thoughts are creeping into my head? It's probably just a double stitch or reinforcement so the fabric doesn't stretch. Just regular tailoring. But her father's voice wouldn't stop ringing in her ears. "Don't wear the dress from your husband." She returned to the bed, picked up the dress, and carefully felt the spot. There was definitely something there, something thin, sewn between the layers of fabric. Her hands started to tremble. Liv sat down on the edge of the bed, hugging the dress to her chest. What should she do? Rip the seam? If there was nothing there, she'd ruin the seamstress's work, and she'd have to explain to Mark why she cut up his expensive gift. But what if there was something? She closed her eyes, trying to calm down. She remembered her father's face from the dream, his serious gaze, his voice, which held not a hint of doubt. He never spoke just for the sake of it. Even in life, when he warned her about something, he always turned out to be right. The decision came naturally. She stood up, went to the dresser, and took a small pair of sewing scissors from the top drawer. Then she returned to the bed, turned on the bright lamp, and spread the dress out, inside out. She found the place where she felt the irregularity, in the side seam, closer to the waist, where, in normal wear, no one would pay attention to a slight thickening. Liv took a deep breath, took the scissors, and carefully picked at a single thread of the lining seam. She pulled. The thread gave way easily, and a small slit appeared in the silk. She carefully widened the opening, trying not to damage the main fabric of the dress. Her fingers were trembling so badly she had to stop and put down the scissors to compose herself. She took up the task again. The slit grew larger, and suddenly something white spilled out of it. Fine powder, like flour or cornstarch, dusted the dark bedspread. Liv froze, unable to believe her eyes. The powder kept spilling, just a little. A pinch, maybe a teaspoon, white, fine-grained, odorless. What is this? Why? She recoiled from the bed, dropping the dress. Her breathing became shallow. A pounding started in her temples. This couldn't be an accident. Someone had deliberately sewn this inside the lining. Mark. Mark had done this, or he'd ordered the seamstress to do it. But why? What was this powder? Liv walked to the nightstand, picked up her phone with shaking hands, and dialed her friend's number. Iris was a chemist, working in a hospital lab. If anyone could help her understand, it was her. "Iris, hey." Her voice sounded foreign, scared. "Can you talk right now?" "Liv, what happened? You sound strange." I need your help. Immediately." Iris grew cautious. "Is something wrong? Where are you?" "Home. Iris, I found some white powder in the dress. It was sewn into the lining. I don't know what it is, but I'm really scared." Silence hung on the line. Then Iris asked softly, "Which dress?" "The one Mark ordered for my birthday." Another pause, longer this time. Liv, listen to me carefully. Her friend's voice turned harsh, professional. Don't touch that powder anymore. Don't touch it at all. If you touched it with your hands, go immediately and wash them with soap several times. Put the dress in a plastic bag and seal it, and collect a small amount of the powder into a separate bag, but do it with gloves on. Understood? Do you have gloves at home? Yes, rubber gloves for washing dishes. Those will work. Collect a sample and bring it to the lab. I'm at work now. Come as soon as you can. Iris, you're scaring me. I don't want to scare you, but this could be anything. From harmless talc. Yeah, we just need to check. Get dressed quickly and come here. Liv hung up, her hands shaking even harder. She went to the bathroom, soaped her hands, and began scrubbing them under hot water. She soaped, rinsed, soaped again. Her skin turned red, but she kept washing, as if trying to wash away not just the powder but the terror that had seized her. Then she returned to the bedroom, retrieved rubber gloves and plastic bags from the kitchen. She pulled on the gloves, took a small resealable baggie, and carefully collected a pinch of the white powder from the bedspread. She sealed it and put it in her jacket pocket. She carefully folded the dress, trying not to scatter the remaining powder, and packed it into a large trash bag. She tied it shut and hid it in the closet. Then she took off the gloves, washed her hands again, got dressed, and rushed out of the house. On the way to the lab, she tried not to think about what was happening. She turned on the radio to drown out the voices in her head, but the music irritated her, and she soon turned it off. She silently watched the road, the traffic lights, the pedestrians, and everything seemed unreal, as if she were watching a movie about someone else's life. Iris met her at the entrance to the lab building. She was in a white coat, her hair pulled back, her face serious. "Give it here." She took the baggie with the powder. "Wait right here, I'll do a quick preliminary analysis." Liv remained standing in the corridor, leaning against the cold wall. Time stretched out agonizingly slowly. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then half an hour. She was about to knock on the lab door when it opened, and Iris stepped out. Her face was pale. "Let's go talk in my office," she said quietly. They went into a small office at the end of the corridor. Iris closed the door, sat down at the table, and gestured for Liv to sit across from her. "Liv, this isn't talc or cornstarch," she began. "This is a very dangerous substance." "What?" "I ran an express test, and it indicated the presence of toxic compounds. To determine exactly what it is, we need a full analysis. But I can tell you with certainty, it's poison." The word hung in the air. Liv stared at her friend and couldn't utter a word. "A poison that is activated upon contact with moisture and heat," Iris continued, "meaning when a person sweats. If you had worn that dress and spent several hours in it, especially moving, dancing, getting excited, that is, during a party, your skin would have secreted sweat, and the poison would have started absorbing." "What? What would have happened?" Liv whispered. "First, weakness, dizziness, then nausea, rapid heartbeat. And then, depending on the dose and exposure time, a cardiac arrest could have occurred. It would have looked like a natural death from heart failure, especially in a 50-year-old woman at a celebratory event where she's excited, drinking wine, experiencing emotions." Liv covered her face with her hands. It couldn't be true. This was a nightmare, another dream from which she would soon wake up. "Liv, listen to me." Iris moved closer, taking her hands. "I understand this is a shock, but we need to act. You have to go to the police, immediately." "The police?" Liv raised her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Iris, that's Mark, my husband. We've been together for 20 years. How could he?" "I don't know how or why, but the fact remains. Someone wanted to kill you and make it look like an accident. He ordered the dress, right?" "Yes, but maybe the seamstress? Maybe it was her?" "Why would the seamstress kill you? Does she even know you?" Liv was silent. Of course, she didn't know her. Ms. Reed was just a seamstress recommended by her friend. They had no reason for enmity. "Liv, you have to go to the police," Iris repeated firmly. "I'll give you an official report on the composition of this substance. I have a detective friend, a good man. Call him. Meet with him. Liv nodded, unable to speak. Iris dialed a number, spoke to someone, then handed her a slip of paper with a phone number. His name is Detective Leonard Hayes. I explained everything to him. He's waiting for your call. Liv took the paper with trembling fingers, stood up, and left the office. In the corridor, she stopped, leaned against the wall, and tried to gather her thoughts. Mark wanted to kill her. Her husband, the father of her child, the man she had spent the better part of her life with. How was this possible? She dialed the detective's number. After a few rings, a man's voice answered. Leonard Hayes speaking. Hello? Her voice trembled. My name is Olivia. Iris gave me your number. Yes, I know. Mrs. Sutton, I understand how difficult this is for you right now, but I need to meet with you as soon as possible. Where are you located? Near the medical lab on Maple Street. All right, I'll be there in about 20 minutes. Wait for me by the entrance and don't go anywhere. Liv went outside and sat on a bench by the entrance. Her legs wouldn't hold her, her head was foggy. People walked by, cars drove on the road, and it all seemed so distant, so alien. 20 minutes later, a dark, unmarked car pulled up. A man in his 50s got out, wearing a dark jacket, with a tired but attentive face. Mrs. Sutton. He extended a hand. Detective Leonard Hayes. Let's go talk. They went into the building lobby and sat on a sofa in the corner. The detective took out a notebook and a pen. Tell me everything from the beginning, he asked. Take your time, but try to remember all the details. Liv began to tell him about the dream, about her father, about the dress Mark had given her, about how she'd ripped open the lining and found the powder. Her voice broke, tears flowed, but she kept talking. Detective Hayes listened silently, occasionally taking notes. When she finished, he nodded. Mrs. Sutton, I have something to tell you, he said seriously. Your husband, Mark Sutton, has been under surveillance for some time. We're conducting an investigation into major financial fraud. He has serious debts to certain individuals, very serious debts. Liv wiped her tears. What debts? He works. We have a stable income. He was involved in illegal real estate transactions, borrowed money from criminal organizations, and lost it. The amount is very large, and he was threatened with violence. But 6 months ago, he insured you for a large sum. We noted it as a suspicious action then, but we couldn't prove anything. Liv felt the world crumble around her. Insurance. He had insured her, and was due to receive the money after her death. So he really wanted to kill me for the money? It looks that way. The detective spoke gently but firmly. And this dress was a way to make it all look like an accidental death. A heart attack at a party is common for women your age, especially with stress and alcohol. Liv stared at the floor, unable to lift her head. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of love, care, shared hardships. And it had all been a lie, at least for the last few months. What should I do? She asked quietly. Right now, we'll take the dress as evidence. The powder sample, too. Iris Reed has already agreed to provide an official report. The rest is police work, but we need your help. Your birthday is tomorrow, right? Yes. Here's what I propose. Detective Hayes leaned closer. You go to your party, but not in that dress. Wear any other one, and we will be ready to intervene at any moment. Mark Sutton expects you to wear that dress and die. When he sees you in a different outfit and alive, he'll likely get nervous, maybe give himself away, and we'll take him into custody. You want me to act as bait? Liv looked up. Not exactly. We just want everything to proceed as usual, but under our control. You will be safe, I promise. My people will be close by. Liv was silent, considering the offer. Part of her wanted to run, hide, never see Mark again. But another, stronger part craved justice. He tried to kill her, the mother of his child, and he had to answer for it. All right, she said firmly. I agree. We'll do it. Detective Hayes nodded with respect. You're a strong woman, Mrs. Sutton. Everything will be fine, I promise you. They discussed the details for a while longer. Then the detective left, taking the dress with him as evidence. Liv remained standing outside the lab, looking at the empty road. Evening was approaching. Soon Mark would return home, and she would have to look him in the eye, knowing he wanted her dead, talk to him, smile, pretend everything was normal. She returned home, barely able to stand from exhaustion and the shock she'd endured. She walked into the house, undressed, and lay down on the sofa, covering herself with a throw blanket. Her eyes closed on their own, but sleep was impossible. Only endless thoughts swirled in her head, giving her no peace. She remembered the last few months, how Mark had become more withdrawn, irritable, how often he left the room when his phone rang, how he insisted on getting the life insurance. They say it's necessary for the family's security. All those little things she hadn't paid attention to now formed a terrifying picture. He had planned this, long and meticulously, and she had almost become the victim of his plan. But her father had saved her. Even after death, he had protected his daughter. "Thank you, Daddy," Liv whispered into the emptiness. "Thank you for not leaving me." Tears flowed again, but this time they were not only tears of grief, but of gratitude and determination. Tomorrow, she would go to her party, and Mark would realize his plan had failed. The door slammed. Her husband was back. Liv quickly wiped her tears and got up from the sofa, trying to look calm. "Liv, I'm home," Mark called from the entryway. "I'm here," she replied, stepping into the hall. He looked at her closely. "You look a little pale. Everything okay?" "Yes, just tired," she forced a smile. "I've been on my feet all day getting ready." "I see. Well, you'll rest at the party tomorrow." He walked into the kitchen. "What's for dinner?" Liv silently followed him, and for the first time in 20 years of marriage, she looked at her husband as if he were a stranger. The night passed in a restless doze. Liv would sink into troubled sleep, then wake up, listening to her husband's breathing next to her. Every time she opened her eyes, her heart began to pound. Reality returned, like a heavy burden. Mark slept peacefully, even snored slightly, and this tranquility seemed monstrous to her. How could he sleep so soundly while planning to murder his own wife? In the morning, he woke up first, stretched, and turned to her with a smile. "Well, birthday girl, let's welcome your day." He kissed her cheek, and Liv barely stopped herself from pulling away. "Good morning," she managed. They ate breakfast in near silence. Mark scrolled on his phone, occasionally commenting on the weather and traffic. Liv mechanically chewed toast, unable to taste it. Detective Hayes had called last night while Mark was in the shower and said everything was ready. His people would be at the restaurant disguised as regular patrons. Liv was to act naturally and wait. "Listen, I have to swing by the office this afternoon," Mark said, finishing his coffee. "I'll be back in the evening, pick you up, and we'll head to the party. Get your dress ready beforehand so you don't have to rush." Liv nodded without looking up. "Okay." He left around 1, and she was alone. She went into the bedroom, opened the closet, and took out the blue dress she'd wanted to wear yesterday. Simple, elegant, the one she felt comfortable in. She hung it on the closet door and stared at it for a long time, trying to collect her thoughts. The phone rang. It was Nikki. "Mom, happy birthday!" Her daughter's voice was joyful, full of warmth. "How's your mood?" "Thank you, sweetheart." Liv tried to sound cheerful. "It's fine, just a little nervous. We're already on the road. We'll be at your place in an hour. Mikey got so worked up he forgot his favorite toy car at home. We had to turn back. Listen, did you try on the dress? Dad was raving about it. I can't even imagine how beautiful it is." Liv swallowed the lump in her throat. "I tried it on, but I decided to wear a different one. The blue one, you remember." A slight pause followed. "A different one? But Mom, Dad ordered that one specially." "Nikki, please don't argue." Liv's voice came out sharper than she intended. "I'm going to wear what I feel comfortable in. It's my party, after all." Okay. Nikki was clearly surprised by the tone. "Whatever you say. The main thing is that you're happy. Kisses. See you soon." Liv put down the phone and sat on the bed. The hardest day of her life was ahead of her. She had to smile, accept congratulations, talk to guests, and all the while know that the husband standing next to her had tried to kill her. She stood up, went to the mirror, and looked at her reflection. 50 years old, wrinkles around her eyes, gray streaks in her hair that she diligently covered up. An ordinary woman who had lived an ordinary life, worked as an accountant, raised a daughter, kept a home. What had she done wrong? What had she done to deserve such betrayal? Tears welled up, but she forced herself to hold them back. No, she wouldn't cry today. Today, she would be strong. Liv went to the bathroom, turned on the shower, and stood under the hot streams for a long time, trying to wash away the heaviness in her soul. Then she dried her hair, put on light makeup, dressed in casual clothes, and waited. Nikki and her family arrived first. Her son-in-law, Darius, carried a huge bouquet of roses. Her grandson, Mikey, ran ahead of everyone and threw himself into Liv's arms. "Grandma, happy birthday! We bought you the biggest cake!" Liv hugged him, inhaling the scent of baby shampoo, and for a moment forgot everything. This was what was real. This was what was worth living for. "Thank you, sweetie," she whispered, kissing the top of his head. Nikki embraced her mother, and Liv felt her daughter looking at her with slight anxiety. "Mom, are you really okay? You look, I don't know, strange." "I'm fine, just a little tired from the preparations." Liv pulled away and smiled. "Come in, sit down. I'll make some tea." They settled in the kitchen. Mikey chattered endlessly, talking about preschool and his new friends. Darius discussed the evening details with Nikki, confirming what time they needed to be at the restaurant. Liv sat with them, nodding, answering questions, but feeling as though she was watching it all from a distance. Mark returned home at 3 o'clock. He was in a good mood, hugged Nikki, ruffled his grandson's hair, and shook Darius's hand. "Well, time to get ready," he said, looking at his watch. "We need to be at the Magnolia Grill by 6. Liv, go get yourself ready. We're running out of time." Liv stood up and went into the bedroom, closed the door, leaned against it, and closed her eyes for a moment. Now he would see she was wearing a different dress. How would he react? She opened the closet, took the blue dress off the hanger, and put it on. She zipped it up, straightened the folds, and looked at herself in the mirror. She looked good, elegant, dignified. She grabbed a small clutch, put her phone, lipstick, and a tissue inside, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the bedroom. Everyone was ready in the living room. Nikki in a beautiful beige dress, Darius in a suit, Mikey in a white shirt and vest. Mark stood by the window and turned around when he heard her footsteps. His face changed. The smile froze. His eyes widened, and for a split second, Liv saw something in them that made her blood run cold. Rage, incomprehension, fear. "What is this?" he asked, his voice too sharp. "What is what exactly?" Liv stopped in the middle of the room, meeting his gaze. "Why aren't you wearing that dress? I asked you to. I ordered it specially." "I prefer this one." She shrugged, trying to speak calmly. "You're not going to object, are you, Mark?" Nikki exchanged a look with Darius. An awkward silence hung in the air. But we agreed. Mark took a step toward her, and his movements conveyed barely contained aggression. "Liv, this is your 50th. I spent so much money, ordered it specially." "I'm more comfortable in this one," she interrupted firmly. "And anyway, Mark, it's my birthday, and I'll wear whatever I want." He stared at her, and Liv could see the thoughts racing in his head. He didn't understand what was happening. Why wasn't she in that dress? His whole plan was collapsing. "Mom's right, Dad," Nikki interjected, sensing the tension. "What does it matter which dress? The main thing is that she looks beautiful." Mark clenched his fists, then relaxed them, forcing a smile, but it looked strained. Of course, I'm sorry, Liv. I just wanted everything to be perfect." "Everything is perfect as it is," she replied, and there was a steel in her voice that hadn't been there before. They drove to the restaurant in 2 cars, Nikki and her family in one, Liv and Mark in the other. He was silent the entire way, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. Liv sat next to him, looking out the window, and felt the tension in the car building. "Do you know something?" he suddenly asked quietly. She turned to him. "What are you talking about?" "Don't pretend. I can see something is wrong with you, since that morning. What happened?" Liv looked him in the eyes and felt everything inside her seize up with pain. This man she had loved, with whom she had spent most of her life, was now looking at her with the cold calculation of a predator whose prey was slipping away. "Nothing happened, Mark," she replied calmly. "I just finally woke up." He was about to say something, but they pulled up to the restaurant, stopped in the parking lot, and Mark turned off the engine. He sat motionless, staring ahead. "Liv, if you're planning anything," he began, "let's go. The guests are waiting." She opened the door and got out of the car, not letting him finish. The restaurant was decorated with balloons and flowers. Iris met them at the entrance with a bouquet, hugged Liv, and whispered in her ear, "Everything will be fine. Stay strong." The guests were already gathered in the dining room. Colleagues from work, neighbors, old friends. Everyone was smiling, coming up with congratulations, handing out gifts. Liv smiled back, thanked them, hugged them, but there was an emptiness inside. Mark stayed close, playing the role of the devoted husband, but Liv felt him trembling with tension. Several times he tried to pull her aside, to talk privately, but she found a reason to slip away each time. The party proceeded. Tables were served, dishes were brought out, wine was poured. The master of ceremonies started the program. Guests gave toasts. Liv sat at the head of the table, smiling, responding to congratulations, but her gaze constantly scanned the room, searching for Detective Hayes's people. She noticed them, 3 men at a table in the corner, dressed inconspicuously but with watchful eyes. One of them caught her glance and gave a barely perceptible nod. They were here. They were watching. Mark grew increasingly agitated. He gulped down wine, barely ate, and stepped out of the room several times to answer calls. When he returned, his face was grim. "Liv, we need to talk," he said for the umpteenth time, leaning close to her ear. "Not now, Mark," she replied without looking at him. "We have guests. This is important." Then he squeezed her hand so hard it hurt. Liv cried out, and several guests turned around. Mark immediately let go, forcing a smile. "Sorry, accident." Nikki looked at her parents with alarm. "Everything okay?" "Yes, totally fine." Liv rubbed her wrist. "Dad's just nervous." The cake was served, and everyone began singing Happy Birthday. Liv blew out the candles, making only one wish, for all of this to end. The guests applauded and took pictures, and in this circle of joy, only she and Mark knew what was really happening. When everyone settled back into their seats, continuing the celebration, Liv stood up from the table. The MC had just announced a break, music was playing, and people were starting to head to the dance floor. She walked toward the microphone, took it in her hands, and the music quieted. "My dear friends," she began, her voice trembling but audible to everyone, "I want to say a few words." The guests quieted, turning toward her. Mark paled, jumping up from his seat. "Liv, what are you doing?" "Sit down, Mark," she said coldly. "Sit down and listen." He froze, not knowing what to do. A tense silence filled the room. "Today I turn 50, Liv continued, "and I thought I'd be celebrating this surrounded by the people I love, but I learned something that changed everything. I learned that the man I trusted with my whole life tried to kill me." Cries of astonishment rippled through the hall. Nikki jumped up, covering her mouth with her hand. Iris held her by the shoulder, keeping her in place. "Liv, have you gone crazy?" Mark lunged toward her, but the 3 men from the corner were already moving in his direction. "What kind of nonsense are you talking about?" "It's not nonsense, Mark." Liv looked at him, and tears finally flowed down her cheeks. "You ordered a dress for me, a beautiful, expensive dress, and you sewed poison into it. A contact poison that was supposed to kill me right here at my party to make it look like a heart attack, and you would collect the insurance money to pay off your debts." "That's a lie!" he screamed, his voice cracking. "I never did that." "I have proof," she interrupted. "The dress is currently with the police. The forensics confirmed the presence of the poison. The detective who was already investigating your fraud knows everything." Detective Hayes walked into the room with 2 officers. Mark saw them and backed away. "Mark Sutton," the detective said calmly. "You are under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder and fraud. Come with us." Mark lunged toward the exit, but his path was blocked. He struggled, tried to push one of the officers away, but they quickly subdued him. They put him in handcuffs. "Liv," he yelled, turning back to her. "Liv, I'm sorry. I didn't want to. They made me do it. I had no choice." She looked at him and felt nothing. No pity, no anger, only emptiness. "You did have a choice, Mark," she said quietly. "You could have told me the truth. We could have faced it together, but you chose to murder me." He was led away, and the room erupted in noise. Guests didn't understand what was happening. Nikki was crying, clinging to Darius. Iris walked over to Liv and hugged her. "It's over, Ollie. It's all over." Liv stood, holding the microphone, and watched the door through which her husband had been taken. The husband who ceased to be her husband the moment he decided her life was worth less than money. Detective Hayes walked up to her. "You'll need to give a statement, but that can wait until tomorrow. Get some rest. You're a very brave woman, Mrs. Sutton." "I just wanted to live," she replied, her voice so tired. "I just wanted to make it to my birthday." The party was, of course, ruined. Guests began to leave, muttering words of support, but few knew what to say. Liv sat at the empty table, and Nikki held her hand. "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" she asked through tears. "I would have—" "What would you have done, sweetie?" Liv stroked her hair. "This wasn't your burden. This was my test." "But Dad, how could he?" "I don't know, Nikki. I don't know." They sat there until the waiters began clearing the tables. Then they stood up and left the restaurant. It was dark and cold outside. The wind rustled the leaves on the trees. Liv looked up at the sky, at the stars twinkling above. "Thank you, Daddy," she whispered. "Thank you for not abandoning me." And for the first time in days, she felt a slight relief. The worst was over. Now, something new was beginning. She didn't know what exactly, but she knew for sure she was alive. And that was a victory. Liv didn't sleep at all the night after that terrible evening. Nikki and her family stayed over, sleeping in the living room, afraid to leave their mother alone. Liv lay in her bed, the same one where the man who wanted to kill her had slept next to her just yesterday, and stared at the ceiling. It was strange to realize the bed now seemed bigger, more spacious, yet colder. In the morning, Detective Hayes came. They sat in the kitchen for a long time. Liv gave her statement and signed documents. The detective explained that Mark had confessed to everything. The debts were so enormous that he was threatened not just with violence, but with a gruesome death. The people he owed were not playing games. The insurance policy on his wife seemed like the only way out. "He says he loved you," Detective Hayes said, pouring himself some coffee, "that it was the hardest choice of his life." Liv gave a bitter smile. "Love, huh? He has a strange idea of love." "Weakness," the detective corrected. "He's a weak man, Mrs. Sutton, and that weakness almost cost you your life." After he left, Liv sat alone in the kitchen for a long time, turning over everything that had happened in her memory. 20 years of marriage, the birth of Nikki, her first steps, her first word, moving houses, renovations, vacations at the beach, arguments and reconciliations, joys and sorrows. Had all of that been real? Or not? Nikki came into the kitchen and sat across from her. "Mom, we need to go home. Darius has work tomorrow and Mikey has preschool, but I don't want to leave you." "Go, darling." Liv covered her daughter's hand with hers. "I'll be fine. I need time to process all this. Maybe you could come stay with us for a while?" No, I need to stay here, sort out the house, the things, the life. She stumbled over the last word. Nikki left tearfully, making her mother promise to call every day. Liv walked them to the car, waved goodbye, and returned to the empty house. The silence was oppressive. She walked through the rooms, and everywhere there were traces of Mark. His slippers by the bed, his razor in the bathroom, his favorite mug on the kitchen shelf. Every object reminded her of the life that was gone. The next few days passed in a fog. Liv went to the police, talked to the detectives, and met with a lawyer. It turned out the house was in her name, and Mark couldn't sell it without her consent. At least in that, she was protected. The trial moved quickly. Mark was sentenced to 12 years for attempted murder and fraud. Liv attended the sentencing and watched as he was led away under guard. He turned back, met her gaze, and she saw remorse in his eyes. But it was too late. Far too late. A month after the trial, Liv made a decision. She couldn't live in that house anymore, where every corner reminded her of betrayal. She called a real estate agent and put the house up for sale. The money from the sale was substantial. A buyer was found in 3 weeks, and the deal closed. With that money, Liv bought a small house outside of Atlanta, a single-story home with a little garden and a porch that overlooked the woods. A quiet place where there was no hustle, no sound of cars, and no curious neighbors' glances. It was exactly what she needed. She only moved the essentials. Everything else, the furniture they'd bought together, the dishes they'd received as wedding gifts, the framed photographs, she gave away or threw out. She wanted to start with a clean slate. She had to quit her job in accounting. There were too many rumors, too many pitying glances. Instead, she found a position at the small local library. It was small, cozy, smelling of old books and creaking floorboards. The pay wasn't much, but it was enough for Liv. She had never chased big money. The job at the library turned out to be a salvation. Every day she came in at 9 a.m., arranged books on the shelves, helped visitors with selections, and kept records. Simple, understandable tasks that didn't require emotional effort. People came and went. Some greeted her, others silently took their books. Liv was fine with it. She wasn't ready for close interactions. Nikki called every day as promised. She talked about Mikey, Darius's work, and her own affairs. Sometimes she cried, asking how her mother was managing. Liv comforted her, saying everything was fine, that she was okay. But at night, when the sounds of the woods surrounded her house, she lay awake, thinking about how easily everything could be lost. 6 months passed. Liv grew accustomed to her new life, to the silence, to the solitude. She learned to cook for one, to watch television without feeling guilty about taking someone away from their tasks. She started a small vegetable patch by the house, planting tomatoes, cucumbers, and greens. Working with the soil was calming. It distracted her from her thoughts. One late spring evening, she was sitting on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange. Birds sang their evening songs. And suddenly, Liv caught herself thinking that she felt good. For the first time in a long time, she felt not just peace, but genuinely good, as if something inside her had finally thawed. On Saturday, Nikki and her family came to visit. Mikey ran around the yard, chasing butterflies. Darius helped Liv fix a wobbly fence. They sat on the porch, eating pie Liv had baked that morning, and simply talked. About simple things, the weather, summer plans, how Mikey had learned to ride his bike. "Mom, you look better," Nikki said, looking closely at her mother. "Seriously, you look younger somehow." Liv smiled. "Maybe it's the country air." "Or maybe it's freedom," her daughter added softly. "You're free, Mom, and it shows." They hugged, and Liv felt tears welling up. But they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of gratitude for being alive, for her daughter being near, for this house, this garden, this silence. When Nikki and her family left, Liv stood at the gate, watching them go. Then she turned and looked at her house, small, cozy, so unlike the apartment where she had lived for 20 years. There was nothing superfluous here, nothing superficial, just her and her new life. On Sunday, she went to the cemetery. She hadn't visited her father in a long time. She bought a bouquet of white chrysanthemums on the way. He loved those flowers. The grave was well maintained. Liv had made an arrangement with the woman who looked after the plot. She placed the flowers, sat down on a nearby bench, and sat in silence for a long time. "Thank you, Daddy," she finally said quietly. "Thank you for saving me. I know it was you. Even after death, you didn't abandon your daughter." The wind rustled the leaves on the trees, and Liv felt as if someone had gently touched her shoulder. She smiled through her tears. "I'm living, Daddy. I'm moving on. And you know what? I like my life. I never thought I'd be able to say that, but it's true. I found myself again." She sat there for a while longer, telling her father about the house, the job, Nikki, and Mikey, as if he were right there, listening to her, nodding and being happy for her. When the sun began to set, Liv stood up, adjusted the flowers, and walked to her car. She drove home slowly, enjoying the road, the fields on both sides, the clouds in the sky. She turned on the radio, and an old song she once loved was playing. She quietly sang along, and her heart felt light. A quiet evening awaited her at home. She cooked dinner for herself, sat on the porch with a book, reading until dark, then went inside, locked the door, and went to sleep. And she slept peacefully, without nightmares, without anxiety. She slept like a person who had walked through hell and survived, like a person who got a second chance and wasn't going to waste it. In the morning, Liv woke up to the singing of birds, got up, and brewed coffee. She stepped onto the porch. Dew glistened on the grass. The air was fresh and cool. She took a deep breath and smiled. A whole life lay ahead, a new one, a different one, but hers, without lies, without fear, without betrayal, with her daughter and grandson, with work that brought her joy, with a home that had become a true fortress. And somewhere up in the heavens, her father smiled, looking down at his daughter. He had always said she was strong, and he had been right. Liv finished her coffee, placed the cup on the porch railing, and went inside. Today was an ordinary day. Work, the garden, a call from Nikki in the evening, a simple, peaceful life, exactly what she deserved, and she was happy, truly happy, perhaps for the first time in many years. I took a slow breath and looked around my little porch, the place where I finally learned how to breathe again. You know, after everything I went through, after realizing the man I shared 20 years with was ready to trade my life for money, you would think I'd crumble. But strangely, I didn't. I bent, yes, but I didn't break. And that's what I want to talk to you about. When life hits you in a way you never expected, when someone you trust shakes the ground under your feet, you start seeing what really matters. I learned that surviving isn't just staying alive. It's choosing yourself, even when it hurts. It's allowing yourself to walk away from the ruins and start building something small, simple, and honest. My dad saved me that night in the dream, but after that, I saved myself. And that's something I never thought I'd be able to say. So, if you're listening to me right now and carrying a heavy story of your own, don't rush to erase the pain. Walk through it, one step at a time. Sometimes the life you rebuild after the silence is far better than the life you fought so hard to protect. If you feel the same way, and if my story touched you, send a like to the video so I can see you're with me. Let's see how many we are. I'm curious. What city are you listening from, and what time is it there? Write it in the comments, and if you'd like to help me keep sharing these emotional, thrilling stories every day, even a small donation makes a big difference. It truly helps keep the channel alive. For more life stories like this, you can explore the other videos on my channel and subscribe. On the screen, you'll see 2 new stories I'm sure you'll enjoy. Click one and start listening right away. With love.